All right, well, welcome to Small Towns Unscripted one more time. We have my friend Rod Cool. Thanks for joining.
No worries.
I appreciate it. This is Nicole Turner. My name's Russ McClellan. This is Tara Kalin. And the videographer that nobody ever sees, the man, the myth, the legend, Hector, is behind the camera. But thanks a lot. And congratulations. I'm just going to say that. 38 years of helping kids.
Yeah.
How does it feel?
Well, it was time, number one. It just was time. But no, it feels good to be done. I'm pretty proud of what I did in my career, so I leave with no regrets. So.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much I want to talk to you about because I think that you are a perfect example of what this show is all about because I've known of you, like you said.
Exactly.
I think a lot of people know of you.
Of course.
And, I think that's true for a lot of us that grow up in small town America. You know of each other, but you don't really know each other, especially when there's guys like you that have ambition problems.
Yeah, like it's hard to have so many things that you have in your life.
700 accreditations and 75 accolades. Anyway, no, and that's what this podcast is about. So hopefully we can get to know each other a little better instead of each other. And then also, I'll give you a true story. I mean, today I had some cancer removed on the top of my head, and the two nurses that were helping me, one knew you from Quincy and one knew you from Chelan.
Oh, that's funny.
And they were like, I don't know, 21 and 23, and they asked me what I did, and I said, well, one of the things I do is this podcast. And then I said, by the way, you said you were from Quincy and Chelan. I go, did you know Rod? Oh, Rod, cool. So they wrote down the podcast, and they're going to be watching it when it airs tomorrow. So you've touched more people than I think you might realize, and I think that's true for a lot of educators and coaches, and your focus on FFA and all of these things. But 38 years of helping kids, and then you have an amazing Facebook page. I want to compliment you on that because
oh my gosh, that's how I really know all about you because of all the fun stuff that you post on there.
Philosophical too. Like you
love that.
I love that, man.
That's Russ all the way, man.
Well, I started that as a whim, just making fun of somebody in the staff room that was on the paleo diet, and I said, if you want to get skinny, go get a sharp stick and go kill your supper instead of try to eat like one. You have to have the lifestyle.
Right,
and
do it all the way.
That's where it started, and it just has grown from that every Wednesday.
Oh, you do it every Wednesday?
Yeah, for the last over 11 years now I've been doing that.
I guess I didn't pay attention that there was a
I
schedule.
didn't either, yeah. That's exciting. And you go deep. I mean, that's the thing. If you go to Rod Cool's Facebook page, you can go deep. I love it.
Well, it's like story time.
Yeah.
And it's what's he been doing lately? I don't even know you, but I know you've been driving around.
And I think the positive messaging that you share is something we need more of on social media.
Well, there's no room in life for negativity. It's too short.
Yeah, I had the same feeling about that. So I have, on my podcast, my Facebook page, I had another one for about 10 years, and then it was hacked, and they shut it down. But I had this rule that if you were judgmental or said anything negative, I'd just delete the post and then send you a message, go, let's not do that anymore on my page. You can do it on your page. I'm not telling you what to do there. But if they did it again, I would just block them. And then I looked, and I had like 150 people at block that I knew. I was like, but there's so much. I just think that, and I want to ask you about this, like for kids. First of all, from 38 years of teaching and educating and leadership, and you taught everything from biology to plant science to animal science to shop to chemistry. I mean,
oh my.
Like you did it all.
Yeah.
So talk to me about the major, if you could just just sum it up, what's the difference between here and now?
Well, when I first started, I taught in a little town on the Canadian border, Selkirk High School, Medellin Falls, Ione, and Medellin, Washington combined to make that school. 108 kids in the high school. Great place to start because those kids challenged you a little bit. They were, rough around the edges, a lot of them, and not a real affluent community up there. I mean, people they worked in the woods, or some of them worked in Alaska as fishermen part of the year, but not a whole lot of money up there. So you just had to make do with what you had, and the school was the kind of same way. So you learned to work with nothing and create stuff from that, and it was real good place for me to start. And I went from there to Zilla, and then from Zilla to Wenatchee, Wenatchee to Chelan, and Chelan, and I finished up at Quincy the last 8 years. So, always in pretty small towns. I mean, Wenatchee's a big high school, but still a small town in terms of that, in terms of just how people are and stuff. But, the biggest thing that changed in kids, I think, is just work ethic. 2014, it was like somebody flipped a switch. First, that freshman class I had that year, when I was in Chelan, you could just see the difference in kids try, their grit and their try and want to work hard to get things done.
Interesting.
And it's kind of slid downhill from there.
Do you think the parents have more to, like, I see a couple things like that in this state, the ideology and the lawmakers have a part of it. And, handcuffing teachers, handcuffing discipline, handcuffing a lot of things from my perspective. And then also the parents, what is it, a combination of things that you think? What do you think was the reason for that?
Part of it, I read somewhere that same year that those freshmen were the first ones that had an iPhone in their life.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Technology.
And that's part of it. Part of it, parents don't parent anymore, sometimes because they just have to work so dang hard, both mom and dad both.
Yeah.
So they kind of leave raising the kids up to the teachers, and then they're not happy with how it goes sometimes.
Yeah.
But, and the other thing is just the social media and all the other things that affect how kids behave and what they think is important.
I mean, it's changed brain chemistry. It's
and they have a TikTok attention span.
right.
Yeah.
That's what I mean.
I have one, a young man that lived with us for a while. He works for Dale Brisby on that rodeo time thing, and he does all his videos. And he said when he first started, you had 7 seconds to get somebody's attention before they scrolled. Now it's 2.5. It's just that's how short our attention span has got for that kind of thing. And pretty hard to teach when you got to shift gears every 2.5 seconds. You just really can't get much across to kids.
Yeah.
Always be so entertaining.
Focus.
Yeah, you're more putting on a show than teaching anymore.
So where did you come from? Were you from a small town, or was this
I was born and raised in Chelan.
Okay.
So I was born here back in 1964 when it was still a farm town.
Okay, so you were well accustomed to small town life this whole time.
Yeah.
So who'd you graduate with? What were some of the guys? Were you Oscarson? And
Jim Beeson was in my class. Maurice Goodall.
Jim's going to get on the show. I talked to Jim.
Jill Marcier.
Yeah.
They were all my classmates.
Right.
I mean, there's 57 kids, I think, in our senior class.
Right. That's great. Yeah. I talked to Jim. He's been busy. He's still busy working.
Now, were you doing FFA and all of that as a kid?
Yeah, I did FFA in high school.
Okay.
Kind of odd. Growing up in Chelan, my family had cows, not apples. So we were a little different. But, and then after high school, stayed involved in the cow ranching and stuff. And when I went to college, I was going to be a vet.
That would have been another good career.
And after my third year of college, I applied to vet school. I was 4.0 and didn't get a sniff, so I went back to teaching ag, which was my original major, and it worked out.
Fine.
Yeah, it worked out.
Where was your family homesteaded, or that they had cattle here?
Well, actually, right up here on top of Clate Road.
Okay.
Here in Manson.
Oh.
There's a winery there now. It was my grandma's place, but my dad and mom run cows up there, and we had an outfitter business, pack people into the mountains to hunt and fish. And
fun.
Is that Dennis's place? Dennis A-Town?
I don't know.
That's
there's a big barn
Plate.
that turned into the winery that was the
Radiance.
Barn. Is that? I don't know what it is.
It was the rounded one like that.
Yeah.
That's Radiance.
Yeah, so that was my grandma's
Different
place.
canyon.
And
That's cool. Yeah,
Plate's up above the barbecue.
Yeah.
and
Turned
then
wine sap.
there used to be a hayfield there, and then we had a set of barns and working pens on top of the hill, and we could just turn out. We had the lease on the North Shore, so from the Forest Service, so we could just turn out the back of the pasture and drive through 7 Star, and then we'd be on our summer lease.
Good hunting up there.
Yeah.
That's cool.
That's very cool.
I love that.
So 38 years. You can't really see all these things he's done, but my God, the highlights. I want to say sorry to hear about your wife passed away.
Mm-hmm.
That's always difficult. You guys were together a long time.
42 years.
Yeah.
42 years. Wow.
Was she a Chelan girl?
Nope, Bridgeport. Her family were cattle ranchers from up there.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Was that your connection?
Actually, we met working at Campbell's, but...
Oh, my
really?
gosh.
Eating cows.
Were you did you work on the veranda?
I tended bar up there when I was in college, but I started out cleaning pools and mowing
You
lawns.
were the pool boy.
Yes.
She hit on the pool boy.
And she was a maid, so...
Pool boy with the cowboy
Oh
hat.
my gosh, this is so cute. Like a little Campbell's meat cute.
Well, sorry
And
to hear
I've been
about her.
fortunate enough. One of her friends from college kind of hooked up with her back in September just because I needed somebody to talk to, and that's been kind of a thing since. So
Yeah, congrats.
kind of nice to...
Well, moving on in life is
God was very kind
what
to
she
me.
wants you to do
That's
anyway.
nice.
Yeah.
That's nice.
And I've read some of her posts as I was kind of looking at your Facebook page. She's very happy too.
Yeah.
Feels very lucky.
She's kind of fond of me, I think.
I love that. It's good to have people fond of you.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
Especially if you keep them around so close, And
then you have two kids. So your daughter and my daughter are the same age. We're in the same grade. They graduated in 2010.
Yeah, and that's pretty cool. In high school, both of my kids were elected as state FFA presidents, and that's the only brother and sister in any state in FFA that have ever done that.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So that's
That's fun.
And we were talking before. So you have a son, Tucker, and your daughter, Sammy.
Yeah. And
I know Tucker very well.
Yeah.
Dude.
Yeah, because he's the auctioneer.
That's what we were talking about. And he's doing
Yeah.
one
He's
this
got
week.
an auction here tomorrow night. I don't know.
Yeah,
what
it's the Stars and Stripes auction at Cider Press for the
okay.
fireworks.
for. Okay.
oh, fun.
Yeah, but he does our North Shore school auctions.
Yeah.
And he does a lot of rodeo events too.
Yeah, he's a rodeo
Well, I'm
announcer.
sure. I think that's the big deal, but
Yeah. I was
I
in
think these are
Grangeville. I was
side
telling
gigs.
him with
Well,
that.
no, his auction business is, he does about 75 auctions a year.
he
Wow.
is seriously so good at
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. He works
You-
the crowd pretty well.
Yeah, you have to talk fast.
Well, but he's got like
the gift for that.
he's very sensitive and compassionate to all these causes.
Yeah.
And that comes across very sincere, not phony, like, just someone that's paid to do their job.
Oh.
No, I
Very-
think he raised last year over $7 million for
Yeah,
different benefits.
he's fantastic.
Yeah.
He makes the event exciting, and he's got a great crew with him. I mean,
So is just Tucker? Is his business just Tucker Cool?
Best Bid Auctions.
Best Bid Auctions. There
yeah,
you go.
he's worth it.
And
Whatever
he's
it is,
selling
he's
real
worth
estate
it.
now
Yeah, and he sells real estate for John L. Scott Farm and Ranch Properties. And
out of
Wow.
Spokane, but he does like 4 states or
4
something.
states of
Yeah.
farm and ranch property.
Yeah, I
That's
met one of his
crazy
guys that moved to Texas, does real estate too.
Oh,
And
They're
then
just
what's-
slinging all kinds of things.
So he has 2 kids. Sammy has 4 kids. You got 6 grandkids.
yep. Just had the last one. He was a month old this week.
Wow.
And
Little
what,
baby.
What is Sammy up to? What's
She
do?
is the ag teacher and FFA advisor at Ellensburg.
Oh, well, that must be quite the program.
That's a
and
good
she's
place.
done very well. 3 years ago, she was the top vocational teacher, young vocational teacher in the country from ACTE. So
Yeah.
pretty proud of my kids and how they've turned out. They've done quite well.
While she's popping out 4 kids.
I mean, just
Yeah.
no.
What's
no.
next? Yeah, I mean, that's work ethic, right? Like, that's the funny thing about, obviously how you and your wife parented your kids and the work ethic you brought with your cows or however you did it. There's no, we talk about this a lot, raising kids. Mine are now
Right.
32 and 28.
No playbook, no super formula.
And it's different. I mean, our kids' age were different. I mean,
They
we,
were.
we could raise them different. I don't think I could raise my kids the way I raised them now without getting in trouble.
Well, it takes...
I didn't beat them or anything, but I'm just saying,
That's
like,
what it makes you sound
I
like.
know, it
I, mean,
does.
I threatened to beat them a lot. I made them work.
I think
My dad made them work.
what used to be a little bit more natural, a natural way to parent and kind of, I don't know, just more of a go with the flow of the times, is now you have to be very intentional. You have to be extremely intentional to kind of create
But you also
that
have
environment.
less time because usually both parents have to work full time, if not more.
No, I mean,
Yeah,
it's
and
no
my
joke.
wife made a conscious choice after Sammy was born because she was making more money than I did. She was an animal nutritionist and worked for Dairy Gold Feed Company out
Oh.
of Sunnyside, managed all their route trucks and did all that. And as soon as Sammy was born, she decided to stay home. So we, on one teacher income, plus cutting meat,
That's
shoeing
what I mean.
horses, and
You got to be
riding
very
pins at the
intentional.
feedlot. That's
Yeah. It takes.
we made it work.
It
And
takes a lot
I'm
of.
taking in kids. And like,
Well,
like I bet you're the
mean,
guy that always made sure somebody.
It's a lifestyle choice too, though, right? I mean,
Yeah.
if you have two incomes, what you're gonna have, what you're gonna do is gonna be different than when you have one. And if that's the lifestyle that you want, and the home life that you desire, then you cut all the
kids are
stuff.
an investment, and you got to invest in with time, not money. And,
Yeah.
And
Ding, ding, ding.
time is the key.
That's yes,
Yeah.
and that gets missed very often.
Yeah,
It
because
is-
you can buy them all kinds of stuff, but if you're not spending time with them,
That's
you're
all they
not
want
raising
to.
them. Yeah.
Literally, all they want is your eye contact.
And I think with my kids, a lot of their success in life came from showing animals, and they both rodeoed. And somebody can help you all the time, but when you nod your head for a bucking horse or for that cow you're riding, or when you're out there in the show ring, the outcome is on you. And they learn that you can get lots of help other places, but it's up to you to make a difference. And if you want to succeed, you have to do it yourself. And
Yes.
and so they learn that self-reliance, and I see that with other kids. And rodeo does that for kids that are involved in that. About the closest thing in high school would be wrestling, where they have, the outcome on the mat is up to you, whether you
Yeah.
do well or not.
Individual sport.
Yeah, you can't blame it on somebody else because they didn't do their job on a team.
Right,
And,
yeah.
and so I see showing animals in rodeo or wrestling very, very key to kids being successful later on in life, because it teaches them that self-reliance, that the outcomes are
Yeah,
on you.
I think you're onto something there, because of all the things that I have, activities and stuff that I've put my son in. 4-H is the one that is the most difficult for him, because he's having to learn to do these things all by himself with all the eyes on him, and that's a lot of fear and nervousness to overcome.
Yeah,
And-
but 4-H, like, they make them do demonstrations, and they have to learn to talk, and
Yeah, he
those
hates
soft
it.
skills are what get you jobs. I mean, you can be trained to do anything, but if you can communicate and know how to smile at people and just be comfortable around them,
Yeah.
I think that is a skill that will take you as far as you want to go.
I think you're right.
Yeah, there's always room for that talent. And that's also the animal part of it in general teaches you something that's intangible and something very tangible. If you don't feed them, they die.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, if you don't water them,
Yeah.
they die. And so, and if nobody's going to do it for you, there's a consequence to that. And I think that's an important component to it, that
For
time on
sure.
task over time, where you don't get the TikTok mindset. You don't get or like water them once a week.
Yeah, it's true, because I will say to him, he'll say, I don't want to go do the chickens. Well, do you want them to all be dead tomorrow? Because if you don't go lock them up,
It's 90
they're going to
degrees.
get it tonight.
Yep.
So, like, they need water just like you, and he's got to make those decisions, but it's not easy.
Cause and effect, and that consequence is, it's interesting. I have two grandsons, 3 and 6, very different. I don't even know how they came out of the same people. They're so opposites, both good, but different. And my daughter's a doctor of audiology, so she's busy working, and my son-in-law has been at the police academy. I think he gets his cop car on the 3rd of July. So she was really struggling with the 6-year-old, but he was a stay-at-home dad. And then he left to go to the police academy. So that was a big,
Change like that's hard on kids.
And I told her,
Big change is hard.
It's not, it's just different, right? And so she's figuring out, and I always tell her, I go, I'm old school a little bit, as my dad was, and his dad, I'm sure, before that. But it's like your job is to set some boundaries, and their job is to figure out where they are. And,
Yeah.
so you got to set them and enforce them, and they got to figure out where they're at, right?
Consistently. That's the catch. Consistently.
And it's hard. I mean, like you said, she's worked. Everybody's.
It is hard.
The time on, like what your wife chose to do, that's a massive sacrifice that I don't, like, that's amazing that it could even be done then, but now I think.
It's even harder now because, the cost of living and just trying to have things for your kids.
Pay the rent.
Yeah.
It's an amazing time, and then you look at our area in Central Washington, and you can see how that's evolved with the money. The gentrification coming from other places with more money. I deal with that and we all deal with that in our real estate lives, trying to figure that out for people, which is just a difficult supply and demand problem. But anyway, I would love to hear like some of your most memorable moments. I know you have. There are going to be a lot of people watching this that were your students, and I remember talking to one of my best friends, Bill, before he died, a lot about his coaching. And I look at FFA instructors like Kevin Amsden and you and others. You touch kids in such a way they never forget you.
Well, a lot of time you just build really strong relationships with them because if they're competing for you, they spend a lot of time in the truck with you. It's windshield time. We're this last fall I had a team of kids in the range contest. They made it to the national contest. It was in Elko, Nevada, so I had them in the truck for 22 hours.
What can you tell me what the range contest is?
It's basically exactly what you do if you work for the BLM or the Forest Service as a range con. They have to identify plants. They have to estimate the volume of standing grass in a pasture.
Oh, like soil.
They do some soils, but it's just, you're evaluating the quality of grass as a forage product for sheep, cattle, and horses. And all that goes into that, and how to run a transect and figure out shrub cover and like I said, determine how much it's been grazed to see if you need to move the cows off at a certain time. So it's a real hands-on, real contest, and one of my favorites because it just started in Washington about 5 years ago, and it quickly became one of my favorite ones to do. I was able to take a team to nationals every year over the 6 years, I guess, that we've been doing it. So it was that was real fun for me. But that time in the truck is where you really get to you learn about their life, and if you show a little interest in what happens for them at home and what goes on, you just talk to them and treat them like people instead of like students, and that's those relationships are huge. And just to get to see kids shine is the most important thing. And I was very fortunate. I coached 25 state champion teams over my career, and
you hear that? 25 state championship teams,
and got to go to
amazing
national FFA back in Kentucky and Indiana and Kansas City, Missouri. So we had those trips were fun. 1 year we rode the train back to Chicago and then drove down to Indianapolis from there, and just had a great time with those kids. It was way cheaper to take the train that year than it was to fly. So we took the train out of Wenatchee, and 2.5 days later we got off in Chicago.
I love what you said about that windshield time with them, because I really have seen in my own life how that is such a game changer with kids and the relationship that you build with them. I started coaching tennis, and I'm there at practice all the time, but it wasn't until we went to state and we're spending all this time driving to state, and you're spending the night in hotels and going to dinner, and it was like the switch got flipped. All of a sudden they're talking to me like normal, not just but actually more inclusive. Like, okay, we're trusting a little bit here. We were
just talking about that
okay
yesterday.
with it.
Where I was speaking at a real estate office in Federal Way yesterday at their big sales rally, and they were talking about trust and how one of the ways you get it is you have to trust somebody else first. You have to be vulnerable yourself. And so often those walls are up and everybody's like a robot, and nobody really gets. That's kind of this whole thing, right? Get to know each other instead of each other.
Yeah. It's so true. But that's back to the whole kid thing. It's time.
It's time.
It's the the quality of the time that makes the difference.
It's funny too to watch them. I would imagine watch them post-COVID versus pre-COVID.
Yeah.
Could you tell me what you saw with that?
Well, COVID, it just, kids didn't have to do anything to get a grade. I mean, I don't know if they even had to show up. It just, and after that, for 2-3 years, it just seemed like, if they came to school, they expected to get an A, not if they didn't do any work. And we're kind of to the end of all the waivers and everything you get to graduate for not passing classes and stuff was this year. And there was a lot of kids coming down the stretch that weren't going to graduate because they didn't work at all, to pass any classes in high school. So, I see that as the biggest change. So this year's freshman class was the best one I've had since COVID, but they were in 5th grade during COVID.
Okay.
So
a little bit younger, a little bit more time in school before.
They had a chance to assimilate again.
Yeah.
Because the ones that were in middle school and freshman year during COVID, really, there's a lot of maturing that goes on at that time, and they didn't get that. It was the social growth that they didn't get during that time. And it took them a long I don't know if they'll ever catch up.
Yeah.
That is going to be interesting. Like the statistics on that in 10, 20, 30 years.
Yeah, that's what I talked to
those folks.
My kid about that, because he was a stay-at-home dad. And I said, not only did he leave, but you also put him into kindergarten, and with kids that have been at daycare since they were born. And he had never really
been in a class environment.
Yeah. So it was like, whoa, like the ADHD on top of that. He's my grandson, so he's got a little bit of that. It's like, and they want to do, it's all the stuff they want to do to them too, like to solve that problem. And I'm just kind of like, let's just, it's a difficult thing because they're, my daughter will call me and tell me, don't solve the problem, just listen to me, and so when I want to solve it, I often go back to a time that I understood.
Mm-hmm. We're not in that time. Knock, knock.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Maybe we should be in that time.
That's not how the world works, my friend. We're here now.
I want that VHS rewind button.
Figure it all out.
Yeah.
Now, let me ask you this, too. You had 2 kids that turned out freaking amazing. Both presidents, which means to me they're alpha.
Yeah.
Did you have any interesting discussions, working with your kids as an educator and a kid?
Well, that I was real happy that I got to teach my kids, but for the most part, once they started showing animals, after the first one, they were kind of on their own because I got 50 other kids at fair that have never done it before, so they had to learn to do things on their own and get better at it on their own. And my daughter worked at it like crazy. My son acted like he didn't care, but he just had a kind of a gift for animals that they would do whatever he asked them to, even if it didn't look like he was trying.
Yeah.
And I think they kind of got that from my dad. He was kind of a horse whisperer kind of guy and could, just do things that were amazing with animals. And my son's kind of the same way. My daughter had to work at it a little harder. They were both very successful in the show ring, but I mean, they pretty much learned that self-reliance and just gentle nudges. I never really had to ask them to do anything. I didn't tell them they had to do the stuff that I did. They just chose to, and that was good.
All right. Well, that's not fair because I got to make my kid.
No, I was pretty fortunate that way, that they kind of just took their own path, and it was the path I would have chose for them, but that was cool.
So you mentioned that you taught at Chelan, Wenatchee, Zilla, Selkirk, Quincy.
Uh-huh.
So all fairly, other than Wenatchee, like you said, but it's still Central Washington. Is there any stark differences that you can kind of point at that you maybe from the outside looking in you wouldn't know, but the culture or are they all kind of just North Central Washington?
Well, I think each school is a little different just from the culture of their town. Mm-hmm. Zilla is a sports town.
Right.
And, I coached girls basketball when I was there and junior high football. And that's right when my wife quit working. So I was every morning, Monday through Thursday, I'd get up and I'd go to the feedlot in Granger and ride pens. I'd be horseback by 4 with my dogs, and then go to school. My dogs get a bath every day. We take a shower at school before going to work all day, and then I'd coach after school, then go home, get 5 hours of sleep, and do
This
it all
sounds
over
pretty
again.
busy.
Do it the next day.
Told you I had an ambition problem.
And just because that's what we had to do to make it.
Yeah.
But, so that town was a little different because sports kind of runs things in Zilla. I mean, FFA was a big deal because it's an ag town, but, literally sports are king there. And Wenatchee, when I got there, it's such a big town that, like, the FFA was the sport for those kids.
Right.
And very successful when I was there. And the kids bought into it, and they were super good kids in terms of work ethic and stuff. And the thing is, a lot of times now, like if you're an ag teacher, you might have 2 or 3 farm kids out of all the kids you teach all day long. There just aren't enough farm kids left.
Yeah.
So I always looked at my job as, I'm the last line of defense between us and starvation, because the farm population can't generate enough statistically, just it's math. They can't grow enough kids to take their place. So, it was my job to find the best and brightest kids and get them interested in working in ag, and then have one kid over my career that's going to change the face of agriculture.
Wow.
And I was in charge of the young teacher program for the state. My teaching partner in Quincy and I did that for the last 7 years. And that was one thing we tried to really instill in these younger teachers, that this just isn't a job that starts at 7:30 and it's done at 3:30. It's 24/7, and it's a lot bigger deal than just a paycheck. And that's was really hard to get them to buy into that,
Yeah,
like
I'll bet.
when you do this job, you get paid for 182 days. They usually give you 40 extra days, and then you work 100 days extra on top of that, hour-wise, just because you want your program to be successful.
Right.
And a lot of the younger teachers don't put in that kind of effort.
Did you know that just innately growing up the way you did with your family?
I mean, Walt worked that way. I had Walt Pearson for an ag teacher.
Yeah, he's
and
another
he was
legend
at
in
Chelan
that.
for 22 years.
Yeah.
And the older teachers, when I first came out back in 1987 of college and went to work, I mean, that was the expectation that, at our professional development conferences like we have next week, that's what you were told. This is your job, and you need to do your job because they're paying you money to do it. And back then it wasn't much. I mean, my first paycheck was $714.85, and I cried because I could almost make that shoeing horses.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You probably did that on
without
the
a
weekend.
five years in
But
college.
what a vision you had with your career. Like,
To
I
change
feel
an
like
industry.
to change an industry and to think of it in such a bigger vision than just, I'm doing my teaching job from 7 to 5.
I don't know, because you're a farmer. I
Yeah.
feel like there's a heart involved in farming, that when you love it and it's a part of who you are, who would want to see that disappear?
Yeah, and it's food security is national security for me. Our country is free because we can feed ourselves. That's how we've won every war that we've won, was with food.
Yeah.
And if we can't grow it in our country for us, we're going to lose.
Well, you think about like the commodities industry with fruit and the struggles that they have been going through for 2 decades, but in the last year or two, it has really gotten difficult. And I've been watching a couple, probably because I've been stalking you on Facebook, but I've been getting a lot of cattle, algorithm feeds, and the cattle farmers seem to be really
raising cows right now is a good deal, but everybody else is not having much fun out there.
Yeah, I mean, good
but
luck
there's
buying a
but they're
cow.
also there's a lot of cattle farmers that are very like realistic. This isn't going to last.
No, it can't sustain itself.
Inflation and costs and fuel.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much that is trickle-down economics as it relates to all things.
Well, it's going to get to a point where people won't buy it because in the store because it's too expensive. We're really close to that now. So
but
when we
what
hit that cliff, it's going to.
Yeah, real estate's like
But
that.
part of what I see happening, I mean, I don't know the scale, but part of what I see happening because of this is more people doing more for themselves. So a lot of people getting backyard chickens, a lot of people putting in gardens.
Yeah, well, I saw that at my plant sale at the. I mean,
Yeah.
usually I have a ton of vegetables left over, and we always grew extra because we donate them to the veterans. VFW down there has a community garden, so we give them
cool.
all the stuff we had left over. This year I didn't have much to give them because everybody bought vegetables at our plant
that
sale.
just feeds my point.
Yeah.
I really see that a lot, just in my own world. And you know, at the Seattle Home Show, we have that yard to table area, and we have chickens, and it's just growing exponentially. I mean, even in Seattle, because you're allowed to have 4, 5, 6 chickens in your backyard in Seattle. I mean, it's people are even putting in those tower gardens in their house, so they can create their own food. I mean, I don't know. Every little bit helps.
I think COVID was a wake-up call for a lot of people in the cities when they realized that the farms weren't in the back of Whole Foods, and the toilet paper wasn't out back, and what we import and what we don't import or what create anymore. And I think we saw I think that combined, you know, we saw a massive surge from the west to the east in our area. And I think the other part of that is the ideology, is the fear of, wait a minute, there's a lot of blacktop here.
Yeah.
And as much as they're trying to do the inner city gardens, and they also have a fentanyl problem. They also have a homeless problem. They also have a weather problem. And so it's an interesting, when you add all these factors up and you see cities moving to all these rural communities with the population base at a pretty rapid, and then you add technology where you can work from home. And then it becomes interesting too, because now we have these other issues.
Yeah.
You know, so it's
the development is a scary thing for me. Just with, you know, you look at the numbers of how much farmland's disappeared, 2 acres a minute. You know,
is that what it is?
Yeah, for the last 30 years. I mean,
have you heard about the propositions all over to take? I think the first estimate's 3 million acres out of the parks and Forest Service and sell it. That's coming down the pipe right now.
Yeah,
that's wild. And there's a bunch in the Meadow Valley that's on the map that they're selling. And I watched a documentary about Colorado, and they're some of the areas are wild amount of public land being put on the market right now to pay bills. It's a fascinating. If you haven't researched that, that's going to be another kind of weird thing. Like all of a sudden you're selling.
You know what though, but things.
Parks.
I mean, I don't know. This is not in my wheelhouse really, but things tend to run in cycles historically, and sometimes we get way far away from anything that makes sense on that loop.
Yeah.
But you know, until the Industrial Revolution, farming was done completely differently. And I think most of us alive today don't even know what that looked like, because we went from multi-crop to monocrop with all these chemicals, and we're just going to come in here and mass produce, and all you're going to do is corn, and all you're going to do is soy, and all you're going to do is you know.
So what do you think? I mean, that's a good point. What do you think the future of farming looks like?
I don't know. I mean, it's kind of scary now because the last combine my brother-in-law bought was $780,000, you know, and he uses it 3 weeks a year.
Yeah.
And the cost of equipment is just insane right now. Some of the equipment they use in the basin, you know, some of the planters, some of the potato diggers are $2-3 million. They have laser weeders now and trying to go all high tech because just to save on labor cost. Unfortunately, our state with our minimum wage, this is the toughest state to farm in the country.
I just saw a deal today where it was a machine that has driven by artificial intelligence, massive amount of cameras that finds the apples and picks 10,000 apples a day.
Yeah.
And so you're like, I get it. I mean, if
and when you move to that, I've actually helped with some of the research on there. They ran it down in Quincy, and they have to rebuild all your trellises so the tree's flat.
Yeah.
So there's no depth, and so
who can afford all of this?
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. I mean, an acre of orchard in the basin right now set up on a trellis is $80,000 an acre, and you have to farm it for 30 years to get even. To me, when you buy the ground for $38,000 an acre.
Yeah.
How do you feel about regenerative farming?
Well, I think if you look, especially the cow guys, that's what we do. I mean, my brother-in-law's farm up in Bridgeport, and I used to help a lot when I owned a few cows up there. But it's all about you take care of the soil with the grass, you take care of the grass with the cows.
Yes.
And you sell your calves so you can do it all again next year.
Yes.
And he was one of the first farmers to use cover crops on dry land.
Yes.
Where he takes his dry land farm, which, conventional wisdom used to be as soon as you harvested, you burn the stubble to put the nutrients from that back on top of the ground, and you sprayed all the weeds out to hold whatever moisture the God give you for this year in Bridgeport, which is not much sometimes. Yeah. And then you go back to doing that. Right now, we haven't planted cover crops for 2 years because we lose every time the reel goes around on combine. We're losing 60 cents a bushel because the price is under the cost of production. But it's the only thing that'll grow there. So it's hard to do it right when you can't make money at it. Well,
I've been following quite a few farmers, one particularly down in Georgia, which is obviously a much different climate. But, he pulls in all the different animals, right, to all play their part in this ecosystem so that nothing gets wasted and everything's, kind of full circle farming. And his soil, he said, when a big rainstorm comes, the farms across from him are monocrop. It hits that dry soil, floods, right?
Yeah.
And it takes whatever good stuff was on top and washes it all way down the road.
Yeah.
And his all absorbs back into his soil, right? Because of the way the method of farming. I mean, I don't know. Yeah. There's ways.
And part of it is, there's so many more people that have to eat than have to farm.
Yeah.
So you really got to, to feed everybody, we have to do it, the most productive way we can. And that there's a balance there that we're not anywhere close to yet.
Yeah, you said something that's probably the most powerful point, and that is in this state, the bureaucracy that is created, the lawmakers that are created aren't farmers.
No.
And the farmers' voices are minorities in legislation.
Yeah.
So consequently, you're at the end of the line. And I think that's true for a lot of things. I mean, that we're facing, especially on the east side of the state. It's not just ideology. It's it's like facts. The taxation, the minimum wage, the regulations, the amount of rules, how long it takes to get a permit.
What it costs and what you can afford to pay in Seattle versus what I can afford to pay a high school employee. I mean, that's not adding up.
What are some of those factors that you're aware of in the farm business?
Well, like the H-2A workers. I mean, everyone that comes here on an H-2A visa to the United States, they want to work their way to Washington because this is the promised land for H-2A guys. Because they're making $23 to $25 an hour, and some jobs even more, depending on what kind of agriculture they're in. But labor is just a tremendous thing that, especially for orchards and stuff it's a perishable crop that you have to hand pick. You have to have people, and there just aren't enough of them anymore. And, immigration laws, some kind of guest worker program that makes sense, that's easy for everybody on both ends, needs to happen. Otherwise, because the H2A thing just isn't the answer. You can't get enough of them. It's too expensive to house them, to feed them, to clothe them, to do all the stuff you have to do to have them here to work for you, to have a crop that's not worth anything. So it's, I feel for the orchard guys. And
yeah, the assumption
I'm
that
happy
they're
for the cherry farmers maybe going to make some money this year.
maybe
Hopefully.
the assumption that farmers will always be there in one form or another by the lawmakers, to me, is such a naive approach.
Yeah, because if they can't make money, they don't do it for fun.
And,
Yeah.
and what I'm seeing in the real estate side of it is we've went through, I grew up on a 10-acre apple orchard here in Manson. My dad, raised 3 kids back when that was
Yeah, and that was enough.
possible.
You could do that.
He worked every day, all day, but he did it. And then the corporations, had to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And then the corporations were taken out not that long ago by multi-billion-dollar conglomerates.
Yeah.
And then now they're pulling out. So when they pull out, like all the sheds were sold,
Yeah.
all the cooperatives are sold. Well, that's a line item now in
Yeah.
some office in some other city in the United States or the world. And when they say over,
So
it's over.
yeah.
And then there's generations of people that are out of work all of a sudden because that's all they knew. And that's I think the dangerous part for us in the hyper local, like a local economist approach, would be when you now are dependent on a CFO somewhere that just says this isn't a positive for our balance sheet, buy.
Yeah.
Then you have vacant buildings, and to them it's not that they want to do it, they want to make money. But if they're not making money,
Yeah.
because Washington's not a good place to do it, and they invested, they're out. And then when they're out, like, okay, what happens now? And so to me, when you see that at scale, you can see a lot of apple farmers now, but you might see it in corn, you might see it in
Wheat.
Potatoes right now.
yeah.
Oh,
Because
really?
potatoes aren't worth anything.
Yeah,
The
it's
other
interesting.
day, one of the farmers down the road from me, where I lived at down there, literally had a front end loader, and they were cleaning sheds with a front end loader of last year's good potatoes, but they have to make room for this year's, and
Yeah.
you could come get them for free, or they didn't have any other animals to feed them to. All the dairies were saturated with them, the feedlots were saturated with them, and so they were just dumping them on the ground and getting them out of the way.
Yeah, it's also now maybe I'm out of bounds on this because I was involved when it was 20 years ago, but regulations, all the regulations, that it's like death through 1,000 cuts. And in real estate development, what once took 2 weeks takes 2 years. What once cost $100,000, like it used to be, even just 5 years ago, it cost maybe $100,000 to get a permit and a year to get a Class A water system permit to do some development. That same permit now, and nothing really has changed, 5 years later, is $300,000 to get the permit to use your water that you already have, and then 5 years or 3 years to get it done. Not just the $300,000, but now 3 times the time. So, for me to think about doing something to get the permit to use the water I already have is $300,000 in 3 years.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, and if you're farming,
so that's
they're
my
trying to
point. That's
take
just
the water from the farmer too. So
yeah, and that's just one of the rules.
Yeah.
Farming, like the use it or lose it rule in irrigation, private
Yeah.
irrigation, that's a massive taking with no, well, in my opinion, with no warning.
No.
There's not a letter like if you're going to lose your license, or if they
Warning,
might tell you, hey, wait a minute,
you got 90
your
days.
taxes are owed, you owe us some money.
Yeah.
They just don't say anything.
but I know
And then it's
people
gone.
have gotten very upset about farmers and their water usage.
Really?
Yes. And yes,
Like, what do you
farms
mean?
have been attacked
Maybe I'm naive.
for using too much water. Why is their
Really?
water so cheap? Blah blah blah. And it's like there's just seems like sometimes a disconnect. Like, well,
mean
their
like-
water's less than your water because they're making food.
You mean like education behind it? Is that
You
what you
know?
mean?
Yeah, like when I was living down in Battleground, there's busy farms, and they've been farming that land for generations, and it's pretty big, and it's in Vancouver, and to make it, they've had to become one of the agritourism kind of businesses, right? Where they've got the fruit stand, and they do the hay pyramids, and they do pumpkin patches, and they do petting zoo, and they're doing all this stuff up front now to try and make it with their berries and their everything else, their crops. And it was this whole big uproar about their water. I mean, their water.
Do you want your food bill to go up?
Well,
times 10?
Well,
Like,
the
it makes
unfortunate thing
food.
with farmers, though, is that they don't get to set the price for their food. They get whatever they get, what the market tells them it's worth.
Yeah.
And, you know, if people in agriculture could set their own prices based on their cost,
Sure.
that would be awesome.
That would be awesome.
Every farmer would
But
come
no
sign
farmer
up.
could
Where do I sign
afford
up?
to pay for water what we pay for water at home.
No. And the thing is,
That's not how it works.
and if you look at the basin especially, you know, the technology from 51 when the water came to now, they use 1/3 of the water that's allotted to them because of the quality of sprinkler systems.
Oh, I see. Instead of just all overhead and
Well, first it was flood, then it was rill, and there's still some rill ground where they have the little pipes and siphon tubes, but a lot of it, the circles, and they went from impact sprinklers to micro mist sprinklers to actually now you got tensiometers in the ground and it only waters where it needs it.
like kind of a drip system, if you will.
Yeah.
So you've been a part of all these different generations of kids, for 38 years. And have you had that one kid that changed the industry?
I don't know. I have a couple kids that are movers and shakers out there right now.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
And actually, two of them from the same family here in Chelan, Lupe Villasenor and Jorge Villasenor. Lupe works for Egg West Farm Credit. She's in charge of their crop insurance from Washington all the way down to Arizona. And her brother worked for Bayer to start out with. I think he's with Syngenta now, but he is in the farm chemical side of the business and has really pioneered some different things in terms of marketing and so forth. So yeah, I think those two are going to do some great things. And
That's really cool.
Yeah, that's exciting.
I
And
have
the tribute
a
to
bunch
you,
of
I'm
other
sure.
kids that are farmers and do that. It's funny. You do this long enough, you're going to have. I have kids on death row, and I got kids that are CEOs of companies. You get all kinds. Some of them it just didn't take. Tried to show them all what a good person looked like, but
Yeah, right.
some
Yeah.
of it just didn't take. But I got a kid that works in the paper industry. Actually has a forestry degree from WSU and a pulp and paper degree from University of Washington, and his first job was working for the people that own the Spokesman Review, and they own Inland Paper, kind of is the company. So he managed all their woods and their newsprint production plant, and now he works for Boise Cascade.
This is a cool job.
Yeah, and so, I got kids that do a little bit of everything.
I bet that's
From
neat
across
to hear
the-
from them when they
Yeah, it
reach
is.
back
It's
and
pretty cool.
say hi to you when they're in town. Well, it's a tribute to you and all the work you've done, and the passion behind the work. And like you said, it's not really a job. It's kind of like a lifestyle to help people and to, actually have that I care about you mindset, regardless of what's happening at their house, and I'm sure that not every kid had the support that,
Oh, no.
they should have or deserve.
No, it'll break your heart.
I
Yeah.
bet that's
Yeah.
hard to not want to
It does.
take them all in,
Well, we had more than our fair share grow up.
Yeah, right.
Live with us in our extra room.
And did you find it especially? I bet it would be especially exciting when you had for lack of a better description, a kid move in from a city, knows nothing about animals, knows nothing about farming, shows up. Their parents had a second home here. Maybe they moved here, and now the kid's in your class, and you get to introduce them to an animal for the first time.
Well, it was fun for me getting exchange students
Oh.
because
Right.
when I was here in Chelan, I taught a equine biology class where we actually started 6 colts every fall, and it was in the block period in the morning. We'd go up to the saddle club, and groups of kids were assigned one of these long yearling horses that had never been handled, and their job was to make it soft, supple, quiet. It had to load, you had to saddle it, it had to do all these.
I'm sorry. Kids are breaking horses in your class?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And we started, I don't know, what did we do that for 14 years? So
That's so cool.
6 horses every fall. So a bunch.
That is so cool.
And it was pretty cool because, there weren't a lot of horse kids. The ones I had did really well, but it was really beneficial to the kids that didn't even have a dog at home.
Right.
To learn how to be around animals and care for them. And
Horses especially. They're a special kind.
And they are. The horses have the biggest heart in the world. And if you can learn to speak their language and ask them to do things on their terms, they will just do everything they can to please you. And I had this kid from France that had never seen a horse, never been on a school bus,
Wait.
didn't speak English. So between
this is fun.
he talked a little Spanish, so between Splinch and Spanglish, we got along and got it, and he had a good time. And it was fun to watch him because, every day was a new day for him and getting to do something he'd never done before. And it was pretty cool. Oh my
gosh, I would love to be the fly on the wall back home. When he went back and talked about these stories about what he learned here.
Well, you've seen it with animals. I was, my dad was a cowboy, and I think the first horse I rode was I think I asked for a horse, and he goes, okay, well, let's ride this one first. And I didn't know I was going to a rodeo at 8.
Yes, you were.
So get on that horse, and then if you want to ride that one coming out of a chute, we'll talk about getting you another one.
Oh boy.
So
actually, that's what I'm doing tomorrow. I'm announcing the junior rodeo.
Yeah.
On the next day.
Oh, and it's a huge. I have friends to this day that we did it. Greg and I were in the same grade, and Kevin and.
I want to get Brody into rodeo.
It's and it's that whole rodeo thing with the horses. To piggyback on what you were saying, especially when kids don't have a lot of love in their home. Animals will give you that love.
Oh yeah.
And you give it back to them, and it's a different way to realize, like, not everybody's a jerk. Not everybody's going to abuse you.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, that class was really cool for the kids that came a little damaged and a little broken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for it to see them maybe smile for the first time ever,
right.
It was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I got to do things that nobody else ever got to see, because of stuff like that. And pretty special.
Had an impact.
So if I'm not your dad, because I'm not your dad, what's the first thing a little kid does at a rodeo?
Ride sheep.
Yeah.
Okay, we did that. Check. He won a bike mutton busting.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay, next.
Get him a rope and a hay bale and a dummy.
And
rope. Teach him how to rope. And
well, I might need to know how to rope to teach someone how to rope.
YouTube. You can do everything on YouTube.
ChatGPT.
Okay. All right. We're on it.
I'll even show you.
We're on it. That's
you know what it is? You take a bale of hay.
I've seen it. I got it.
You got that?
That black dummy thing you stick in
the
there.
steer's head.
Yeah.
But you can also do all kinds
and
of
then
fun.
you get the little play one you can have in the living room that's this big with little bitty ropes.
And then they have calf riding. They start out with go from sheep to calf, like a little calf. Yeah. Doesn't hurt you. They don't have any horns or anything.
Right. Well, the ground hurts.
That's that's the good part of it. Like, that's what you want. Is that it didn't kill me.
Yeah.
Oh, so not all of my fear should be given like it's recognition. Like, I know there's things that will hurt a little, and then that slowly helps you.
Like, you're okay, but you're okay.
Yeah, you're okay. Yeah. And there's a lot of other kids doing it too, so you're nervous as hell when you first do it. But then it's like public speaking. Yeah. To your earlier point, if you can talk and you can be personable and nice to somebody, you probably can get a job somewhere. If you can overcome your fear because all these other little kids are doing the same thing you're doing, that's part of it.
And everything life throws at you from then on, you can just meet head on.
Yeah. I mean, I was telling a joke, not really a joke, it was Harlan Knowles' ranch, and Greg and I and a couple other people, Pee Wee Greg, and we were exhibition riding with them, and they were probably having some Jack Daniels, and it was just testing some of their animals, right? Harlan's.
Yeah.
So we were too young to be riding what we were riding. There's no regulations. It's at night. I get knocked out. I wake up in the emergency room. My dad is just different type, right? And Dad goes, like, I was out for a while, and they do the numbers and where you're from, and I'm probably 12, maybe 13, 12 probably, and here's my dad after being fully unconscious. He goes, well, you want to go ride some more? Like that right there. I think about that and I'm like, I think you'd be arrested for that now. Like, concussion protocol. What are you talking about, kid? There's no helmets. There's no vests, Yeah. And I don't know if that's right either, but it definitely shows you just in one generation or,
the change.
And like, not all of that stuff was probably a proper way to do it.
That's liability insurance.
Yeah.
Brought most of that on.
They're like, what? Yeah, it's just, and I think that there's like that windshield wiper approach that you talk about, where there's some things, obviously needed to be adjusted. And then there's other things they just went so far with these rules and regulations. Have you seen, like we talked about being an instructor and an educator, the government tying your hands and teaching over the years?
There's a lot of strange stuff has happened since they started educational reform. The No Child Left Behind thing. And
when did they start that officially?
First Bush. So I don't know how many years ago that was.
It's been a long while.
But I mean, it
80s.
just kept getting more and more and more and more. And
can you explain from your experience what that means?
Just going to all these standardized tests that really do not measure your value as a human being at all.
I see.
And we're supposed to teach kids individually, but then we measure them in the same box. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Because each kid's different. And I can remember growing up, I did pretty well, and I never had to do any of that stuff. And I got 3 college degrees. I, been successful in my businesses in that, and, and didn't have any of those fancy measuring tools to tell me whether I was good at stuff or not.
Well, I mean, doesn't seem like rocket science to me, but I mean, maybe I'm missing something. We seem to be worse. Our numbers in school seem to be worse.
Oh, yes.
Our results are worse. Kids are performing less, and they're still pushing the same agenda. So
it doesn't make sense.
Like 1 + 1 does not equal 2 here, and I don't know. I mean, I'm not involved enough to really understand, but like if you could go in and shake it up and do it how you wanted, what would that look like?
Just a very common sense approach, and each community plans what their kids need to do. Here's what the state, the bare minimum, what you need to do to be a high school graduate, and then everything else is up to the local school. The way it used to be, that's, before the Department of Education, when I was in school. That made way more sense. Kids were way more successful. And if a kid didn't meet standard, they stayed behind. There was a young man that in first grade, it was in my class, that got held back. And for him, he never flunked a class again because he didn't ever want to do that again.
Consequence.
And there are consequences to not, behaving and not learning and not doing what you're supposed to do. And the biggest thing in education, the hardest thing is that everybody's an expert at education just because they went to school one time. They never saw the research and all that. And some of the research that they use to make decisions doesn't make any sense anyway. Because a lot of education is just intuitive. I mean, when I came out of college, I was so underprepared compared to today's teachers and what we got for training. And, and you just kind of had to go with what felt right. And
it's funny you say that, though. At the same time, the younger teachers are often misguided in their ideology and their work ethic.
Yeah.
Like
to some extent.
So on one hand, you got all these better skills, but you have better life skills.
Yeah.
And that's the...
Yeah, I don't think there's an easy answer, and we've thrown so much money at it this far. Nobody wants to say, "Well, that didn't work. Let's just try something else."
Well, and it's hard to add regulation and then take it back.
Yeah, and that hardly ever happens.
No, they just add more that conflict with the original, and then it just keeps adding more.
I had this conversation with a lot of people. It's not really politics, but kind of is. Like, where does big government work? Yeah. Like, where is it that big government has? Where you've gone from this size government to a bigger government, and it's better. Like hospice? I think hospice was great. I mean, that's one government type program that when my mom and dad died, they were amazing.
Yeah.
But
I
they
had
were.
to put my mom in hospice last week. And that was a
I'm
rough
sorry to hear
deal.
that. Yeah,
Oh, she's 96. She was
she had a good run.
Yeah, she did. And like I said, she was the oldest of 4 daughters up here at my grandpa's place. And so she had to be a boy. And I mean, she could work
Yeah.
as hard as anybody else. She picked apples
Oh.
and ran the cows. And then her and dad had our cows and stuff as a business. And
So 96?
yeah,
So when was she born?
28.
28.
Yeah.
Wow. I bet she had cool stories. Where did they like grow up?
She right here, just up
right-
the hill from here.
Wow.
Yeah, so your family.
She was a apple blossom princess in 1946
Oh.
Wish
at
you-
Manson High School.
And, yeah, and,
I
my,
got a 92 right here.
and my mom was 56.
Yeah.
And what was Kelly, my sister?
Oh.
We just talked about 70, 75.
Yeah, 70.
So we got a lot of princess and royalty around us.
That's so cool.
So where was your mom and where are your grandparents from?
My mom's dad, when he was 11 years old, they put it from Enid, Oklahoma, and his parents put him on a train with his horse. He got off in Seattle and rode back through the mountains and homesteaded up there.
Let me get this straight.
Wait, let's.
11-year-old
Yeah,
by
we-
himself
Yeah, by himself
with a horse.
with his horse.
Got to Seattle on a train because that was the Great Depression.
No,
Well,
was
no,
that the
this-
wind thing and the dust bowl?
No, this was back in.
What was it called?
I think he came here in 1903. So
It's okay.
I can't get words out.
1903. Yeah.
1903.
yeah, and
When
they-
was that
So
dust
that was
bowl
before,
thing?
that was
the
20s.
30s,
20s, 30s, yeah.
the
Okay,
20s and 30s.
okay,
yeah.
okay.
You better read the Grapes of Wrath when you go
Yeah.
home.
I just am not good at numbers in history.
But yeah, so I mean,
What a wild move.
yeah,
Now,
different. And then his brothers came out, the Griffiths.
okay.
Like
Yeah.
Snuffy? Wait, is that
Yeah,
the person?
that's was
Green.
my uncle. Would have been my uncle.
Okay, all right, okay.
And but Elgin, my grandfather was Walt, and then they had 2 other brothers that came, and then their parents came out after that, and they lived on Sword Out down here on the bottom.
Wow. So you
Oh
think that
my
was
goodness.
a strategic move? Like there's nothing here for you. You're old enough. Go make it out west.
Well, you just go find us a place. They'd read about
They
it
were
in
like
the newspaper.
scouts.
Like a scout, yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and he
I
homesteaded.
got a word right.
At
he
11.
actually homesteaded. Who else did that? The Watsons?
A lot of people.
Oh yeah, a bunch
A lot
of
of
people.
people,
Stamps.
the old
I meant that we
families.
had here. Oh, and the stamps.
Yeah.
Yep. I remember we just had a few of these conversations.
Yeah. My
Yeah.
grandma Daisy was a covered wagon girl.
Yep.
I
And
mean,
then my mom's mom, they, her dad immigrated from Wales to Pennsylvania, was a coal miner, and then they came out in a wagon, and they lived right at the bottom of Clate Road where Walls used to be, Judge Wall's old place. They camped there for 2 years and lived in their wagon, and he was a miner up lake, and then the family stayed down here.
Okay, so tell me
Interesting.
the year that the 11-year-old came again.
1903.
Okay, so 11-year-old in 1903 versus an 11-year-old in 2025.
They can't walk across the street by themselves.
Yeah. And
I just heard a
and
term.
depending on the size, they might be sitting in like
Like
car
that
seat in
is
the back seat.
so. That is that. My wheels are turning.
I
I
just,
can't even get
uh,
words out. That is so extreme.
I'm just
Yeah.
listening to this audio book. I don't know if you guys have heard of it, called The Comfort Crisis. It's
Yeah,
an-
yeah.
It's an amazing book. And I heard a term I hadn't heard before called snowplow parenting. Where I've heard of, they said helicopter parenting started in 1990 with it's really our generation, right? And then that was like, we're just going to kind of watch over you. But then snowplow parenting is you get in front of all obstacles and your kid
Clear
sees,
the path.
and they don't see any adversity until they get in real world life and life hits them. And then the
They're
anxiety.
like living in their basement
Yeah.
and they can't do
Yeah,
it.
so I thought it was a pretty I mean, maybe this is an old term, but I just heard it in a book, and I thought it makes a lot of sense. You know, where kids can't.
Yeah.
I'm
make
literally
decisions.
trying to force my child right now while we're doing this podcast. He's almost 9.
Yeah.
To walk. How far is it to Manson Bay Park? 2-3 blocks in a straight line. Go to the park, child, and swim and play and have a good time.
Where do you think that fear is? Man, is it like all his friends the same way? Kids in general.
I mean, I don't know. It doesn't come from me. Because at my house, I'm like, get on your bike, ride to the barn, do the animals by yourself. You're fine. Go. You know?
What
go.
are you seeing kids that are coming up?
Well, a lot of that same thing you just talked about is that they don't have, if things get hard, they just quit.
Yeah, apathy.
You
And
almost
they're
have
It's
to,
like, I don't understand
you have
where.
to breed that kind of quit into kids. I mean,
See,
you know,
I don't
we have
see
these
where he gets
conversations as
that.
ag teachers all the time.
You have to breed that kind of quit into kids.
Well, yeah, because
Yeah.
you have to allow them to quit. You have to give them.
No, I don't
The
know.
button.
I'm going to say, I don't know. I don't know
Yeah,
I don't
but-
know if what you're saying is true, though. Because I'm telling you right now, I do not do that to my kid.
Well, that's good.
That might
Your
be-
kid
And
will
I
be fine.
cannot get him to do the things like that I
Well-
feel like he should be doing.
And it might not be you. It might be.
The peer group.
It might be friends. It might be other family that they listen to it. It might be teachers that they hear it from. It might be things on social media. It might be like we always talk about 1,000 cuts somewhere else, and it might not be from you.
Well, well, then that's what I'm saying. What are you supposed to do if in my home that's not what is presented or created?
Yeah,
And he does not get a lot of screen time.
Browbeat.
You know? So it's like, what in the world? I'm saying go, be free, be wild,
Yeah.
you know, test it out, find out.
And what is your experience with, if you had to because obviously there's not a one size fits all to anything.
Well, one thing I'm all about tough love and brutally honest with kids in my classroom. If they screw up, it's my job not to let you screw up again. I'm going to tell you did something dumb, you know, and you were wrong, because it doesn't help me or help you for me to just gloss over that or sugarcoat it, you know. And
Yeah, I agree.
and you know, the kids that had a little bit of toughness, they appreciated that,
Yeah.
and the other ones just folded. And it's,
Yeah. Called their
they
parents, and
couldn't
the parents
handle
come up.
any kind
And
of criticism at all.
and
it's
how many
like,
parents did you have come up and yell at you and yell at the principal and yell?
Not many.
Not many?
No.
Well, you're a big guy. He's got a 6-shooter in the back of the truck.
Well,
I mean, I think that's what I heard from a lot of my friends that are teachers is that's
And some
part of the
parents just scream like crazy.
Yeah,
I mean,
part of the
I've
problem.
been pretty fortunate just because I was honest with the kids and they knew that it was their fault if they didn't get it and didn't get their work in and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And as long as you're up front with them and don't surprise them with stuff, you just let them know all the way along the way this is not going to work. And
that's true. There's a lot of positivity in the setup.
Set the boundaries and enforce them.
I mean, Brody likes to know
expectation.
everything up front. You know, don't surprise him with where we're going or what's happening today or what he's supposed to do. Like, there's a lot in the setup. That's
and my
so
classrooms
true.
were always wild and crazy and loud, and I'd walk around on the tables and jump up and down and
There you go. That's what you do.
go a little crazy just to make it fun. And, you know, I'd make them laugh every day, because if they laugh, then they associate this is safe,
Yeah.
and then they learn despite knowing they're learning. So I kind of set it up that way. I always try to be the kind of ag teacher I'd want my own kids to have. That's the way I approached it from the very first day in the classroom. And I think if for young teachers, that's the advice I give them, is that, you know, be the kind of ag teacher you wanted to have as in high school, or you want your kids to have.
Well, I don't know if you can see this, but young teachers, you should look at this. This is like 30 professional recognitions. I mean, your accomplishments that you've been recognized for, and there's probably many more that you haven't been. So it's a tribute to your style. I mean, do you think your style is unacceptable in a new teacher with administration?
I'm a dinosaur.
Yeah, does that mean
Yeah.
that it's not allowed anymore?
Well, just I for my profession, you know, I grew up on a farm. I grew up on a ranch.
Yeah.
I worked in agriculture. I got my first job thinning apples at 8 years old, and you know, so I lived that. And then you bring all that life with you to the classroom, and
Yeah.
a lot of young teachers, they don't have those life
They're
experiences
teaching
to
something
bring.
they haven't done.
Yeah,
They just
and-
learned it.
Yeah, and that's really hard for them to, you know, create the atmosphere that I could just from the life I lived. And
So what's up for you now?
well, I'm going
Beat
to
ya.
Good job.
I announce a few rodeos. I do junior rodeos primarily because I think that's fun, and I believe in rodeo and want to make sure it keeps going.
Yeah,
So
Make it fun for the kids.
and been doing that for I started running the rodeo here in Chelan back in '93 and ran it 26 years until when I left for Quincy. Brought back the junior rodeo after 20 years of it not being there. And
how's the participation in the junior rodeo?
it's really good right now. I mean, I have I'm doing Davenport this weekend, and there are 220.
So how do kids get involved
That's
that
great.
want to get involved?
You
rodeo?
join one of the associations, either the Caribou Trail Junior Rodeo Association or the Eastern Washington Junior Rodeo Association, and they have a couple rodeo Bible camps for kids where they go through all the different events with them and train them.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Is that a day camp or a sleepaway?
No, it's a week usually, 5 days.
Okay.
They do one up in Molson, Al Parsons Diamond J Rodeo Camp, and then the McMillans do one in Waterville called the Big Bend.
Oh, this
Bible
is
rodeo
cool.
camp.
Okay.
So pretty cool experience for kids,
Yeah.
and that gets them started, and it's real safe, and they train they train to their ability, and the ones that are a
Okay.
little better and have done it before, they have a little more advanced things for them.
I love this.
But that's a cool opportunity for get kids involved, and and it's kind of hard here because that used to be the lifestyle here. There was a lot of good cowboys came out of this town.
Yeah,
Back
I mean
in the
that's.
day, and
I
it
guess
just,
that's why I don't hear about any of this.
We didn't have
so-
a choice. It was all
Yeah.
our parents. That,
I mean, back in the late '80s, this was the bull riding center of the universe. 5 of the top 15 bull riders in PRCA were from Chelan, Washington.
that's something. I remember. Is it still like that, where all the parents bring the travel trailers and they all hang out?
Well, they're all living quarters trailers. I don't know what they do for a living, but they have way more money than me.
You don't have that 19-foot Terry 1972 travel trailer with the leaks and the mold and.
I don't know. When we go to fair, we have to rent a trailer just to stay in. We don't have one.
Yeah, our parent, there were so many I think there was a tribute to all those parents back then, because they that was what they didn't have vacations. I mean, that was their vacation.
Yeah, my kids always ask me, how come we didn't ever go to Disneyland? I said, I took you to 14 rodeos this summer. I spent 4 trips to Disneyland.
Yeah, and all those entry fees.
$5 diesel.
Yeah, and those entry fees weren't free. I
No.
mean, and it was something else, They still give away the buckles and the saddles and all that.
Yeah.
Do you have a hard time getting this junior rodeo sponsored?
The sponsorship has come around
Yeah.
a lot lately. It was hard when we started, and they've kept it going since I kind of stepped away from it here, and they do a really nice job with it.
Yeah.
And then to go back to your other question, I judge fairs. I'm judging at Grace Harbor County, judging the beef. I'm judging the beef and the hogs at Kitsap County Fair.
What are you doing at Chelan County Fair?
Nothing.
Come
I'm
on.
at Walla Walla that weekend judging
all
cattle.
right. Okay.
And then
Stay
I
busy.
judged the Pendleton Junior Livestock Show and Colville, the Northeast Washington Fair, and I have more time for that now, so I'll probably pick up a bunch.
Is that what you enjoy most? Is the
I do like doing that. I think that if there's a kid willing to put that much work into those animals, there should be an adult telling them how they did.
Yeah, and you know
That's
what? What
good
I
for
like
you.
about someone like you doing it is that you seem nice.
Oh.
He's on a podcast.
There's some judges I've seen around these kids, and they're not actually that nice.
Yeah,
and they kind of scare the kids, or just
And to me, I
Yes.
don't see any future in that. For me, it's a
like if you're
well, if you
intimidating the
read my
kid,
thing
how are
last
they
week,
going to
I'm a
want to do
sucker
it
for a
again?
teachable moment.
Yeah.
And so I do a lot of educating of the crowd. By the time I'm done with the show, they know what I'm going to pick because I've taught them how we look at them
What
and
you're
what
looking
we're
for.
looking for throughout the whole show when I give reasons for each class.
I love that.
And it trains parents to buy better animals for their kids the next year and helps the kids do better.
That might be a good place to start with your son. Just take him to some of these events.
Well, he's in it. I mean, we got goats this year.
Okay.
He started out with chickens as a clover bud, And now he's got boar goats.
The other thing, like, I don't know if you can still do this, but when I had friends from Seattle that I met in the summer when I'm 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, my dad was like, with your kids. I mean, he was religious. We were gone every week at a rodeo. Yeah. And, but we would take them in, if somebody was new, we would take them behind the chutes, let them watch. I don't know if they can do that at scale, but
and
that might be.
That's the one thing cool about rodeo is everybody helps everybody else.
For sure.
Even though that they're there to beat you.
Yeah.
You see that from these junior rodeos to the amateur shows to the pro shows. Everybody helps everybody.
So to her question, which I think is a question that many parents have, like, what from your experience would you to if somebody's afraid, kids are afraid to do anything, how do you get them into these animals and rodeo, and how would you go about it?
Well, I think the big reason kids don't want to do that stuff is they're afraid of being shamed on social media. Honest to God, it's a fear that somebody's going to videotape it and then they're going to be a viral video somewhere.
Well, that's not my son's fear. He's only 8. He doesn't conceptualize
but
that
I mean,
yet.
I know high school kids, they don't try new things
for sure.
because they're afraid to fail. And I try to tell them that when you first started to walk, what did you do? You fell down. Did you quit? No, you got right back up and tried again. And I said, this is no different. When you start something, you're going to suck. And you got to be willing to suck at it long enough till you're good at it. And that's hard for kids these days to conceptualize that.
It's hard for adults.
Or even to conceptualize that even if somebody posted a video of you failing, it's going to pass. You're going to be fine. Nobody's going to think about it in 3 months or a year or 5 years.
3 days.
Yeah, and it'll make you a better person. So,
Rod,
you can't be afraid of that either.
You're right. It's in adults, too. I think whatever happened in COVID, like, that disease spread. And I had, at one point I had almost 100 real estate agents not that long ago. And the lack of intensity or the lack of pride or the lack of work ethic
desire, maybe.
The ambition. Like, I remember thinking to myself, like, you're on a commission basis. You're not getting paid for time. So what are you doing?
Yeah.
Well, I need a work-life balance. I'm like, well, your truck's getting repossessed in the parking lot. How's that working out? And you'd work 20 hours a week, maybe. I'm like, this doesn't work. I don't care if you have a lemonade stand or an apple orchardist, a hardware store. I don't. If you're self-employed and you're getting 100% commission, that's where you're getting your money. You better work, and you better keep working and keep working and live on the low and invest on the high if you get anything. And it's just like the ideology was literally the agents would look at me and just kind of go, I don't think that's fair. Like, I'm not, what are you, I'm just very honestly, I was confused. So I went kind of backwards and went downsized again and just got more focused on smaller amounts of people because at scale, it's challenging.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then I tell them, to your point about what you said, Nicole, about marketing. I mean, literally there's social media where it's free that you could do a video and get your name out there. That doesn't you don't have to spend any money advertising in a newspaper, advertising on the radio or billboards or anything that costs money. You literally can do a video twice a day for free, and they won't do it. At scale, they won't do it. There are people that do it, but that's like the 5% that do 95% of the work. Or, and it's not for everybody, but if you're not, I just tell them, if you're not doing anything, it's hard to make money.
Yeah.
So you might want to start somewhere.
Yeah.
So what has propelled you to do your Wednesdays?
Well, it just started as a lark.
Sure, it started as a silly thing, but why did you keep going?
It's cathartic for me. It just helps me focus on how I see the world.
Yeah, positive.
And it's my self-reflection time.
And what feedback do you get from that?
I don't
Anyone
I
ever
don't really
comment?
pay attention to the comments.
Posting
But I mean,
ghost.
in life, like like we saw you and we're like, yeah, we read that, we love it. Do you get people to comment?
Yeah, I do. I was standing in line 5 years ago to get my honorary American FFA degree, and they announced my name for the picture.
Oh,
and the guy goes, "Hey, I read your stuff on Facebook."
Yeah, that's what I mean.
And he was from Ohio. I didn't even know who he was or how we even saw it, but It's
Okay, I
just
love
ki-
that.
Just kind of funny.
And that's why I think that we tend to crucify social media, but it's really also a platform for good if you let it.
Yeah,
You
and
can
I
reach a lot of
try to
people.
do that all the time. It's all about
Yeah.
positive.
And that's what I try to do too.
There aren't enough. There's way too much negative in the world.
You know what I like about it that I noticed was so different from most things I read on there is you write the way that you talk.
Yes.
And you go long form.
Right?
you write
Right.
it.
But it's like
It's
stories,
great,
right?
yeah.
But he
Love it.
is using his own language.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
not, all of a sudden he's switching gears and he's writing formal English, right?
No.
You're writing the way that you talk, and I think that is so endearing, and it makes it be so like much more personal and relatable, and the person reading it has a sense of who you are.
I think the gold nuggets for anybody, especially in our business of real estate, but in life, is the gold nugget is authenticity. If you can find that,
Yeah.
and that's what's going to separate you from the herd.
Yeah.
But that's not easy to do for people.
No.
Like
and
you
I've
said.
always been a what you see is what you
Yeah.
get kind of person.
And I think that it's that simple for us to say that's how we do, because that's how we are. But I think that's a challenge for younger people to be authentic.
I mean, it does just take practice, and I think depending on the age, it's just something you develop more as you get older.
Yeah, that first public speech is not going to be probably as good as the 100th.
Yeah, and just to get kids to find themselves and
Right.
who they are.
And that's
The-
what your 20s really is about. Your,
Yeah.
late teens, 20s. That's what you're figuring out.
Yeah, and it's, and as a teacher, that's your payoff, because usually you don't know if you had any kind of impact until they're 26, 27 years old.
Right.
And they'll see you somewhere and say, hey, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know that I saw 2 today, and 2 nurses were cutting my head open trying to get some cancer off me. So you've had an amazing impact, and like Walt did before you, and
Now
Kevin did out
you're
here.
living back here in
Yeah.
Chelan? Okay, well,
There's a
so see,
beautiful
we're
view.
so lucky to have you back, I feel.
Well, his view of the lake or the Columbia River is pretty special.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
I think I remember when you got that place.
Yes.
That's right outside of town where you look over towards the east on the way
Straight
to
across
Terrace,
from
on the
McNeil
cliff.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
I'm a
I
cliff
love
dweller.
the little photographs of you and your cup of coffee in the morning.
Yep.
Life isn't that bad.
Nope, it's
Well,
not.
we've been talking for an hour and
Yeah.
a half almost,
Yep.
and I wanted to tell you thank you for all you've done for all the kids in the valley and all around, and your accolades, and I mean, just you as a human being. It's been a privilege
Well, thank you.
to talk to you.
I enjoyed this.
Good. And I look forward to running into you somewhere on the rodeo circuit or a fair somewhere or something.
Yeah.
Down the road.
I have a feeling you're just getting warmed up.
Well, I don't know. It's just a struggle to be relevant now.
Oh, I doubt that.
No, you're
I doubt that.
in time.
Good
in time.
people are always relevant, right? Kindness is always relevant. So it's been so awesome to get to know you.
Well, thank
All right.
you.
Thanks again, Rod. Thanks again for tuning in one more time.